Hey guys, welcome back to the Doremicom channel. We're here to film episode 5 of season 2 of the RTD, Video Games in a Nutshell. How do you define a gamer? Tabletop games, role-playing games, video games? Video game sales and numbers of players dominate these three pillars. In this RTD, we're going to stray a little from the normal topic and take a look at consoles versus PCs, history of video games, and those things video game manufacturers do to help drive sales. With me today is my panel, and we're going to start off with John, WargamePainting. You're on, John.
No, he's not. He's frozen in time.
Fantastic.
Uh-oh. I just got the biggest lag spike ever. Anyway, I'm assuming that we're on question 1, because you're starting with me.
No, you're introducing yourself.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know how long I was gone. I assumed we did all this. You just skipped right over me. No. What's up, guys?
All right, next is SolidSmurf, the co-host.
Yo.
All right, and Shiz1!
What's up, guys?
Total contradiction of
We're
my
so
energy.
excited that you're here.
Yes, we're very excited.
Hey.
All right. So, we're going to actually start with the question number 0. There's not going to be a debate after this because it's just to kind of give some update as to where we're starting this conversation from. Just to give question number 0. Just to give the audience a quick understanding of your perspective, please give an overview of what consoles and PCs you own or have owned. For this, we're going to start with John from WargamePainting.
All right, I'm PC born and bred. I've had one since 98, something like that. And, yeah, I have no experience with nothing else. I don't know how old I am.
Wow. And then
All right.
the doctor spanked me.
Here's your PC, son.
Okay, I'm going to go through this quickly. I started with the original Nintendo, had a Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, Game Gear, Sega Genesis, 32X, Dreamcast, Nintendo 64, GameCube, PC, PlayStation 2 and 3, and a PSP. So I'm console born and bred.
And a PC as well.
And I have a PC.
Fantastic. Shiznap, you're next.
Okay, I'll take everything Smurf just said, and I'll add to that way back in the late 70s, the Odyssey 3000, the Atari 2600, and multiple PCs from Commodore 64 all the way up to PC clones today. So
Get the Commodore.
Awesome. For me, I'm going to start with Pong. Go over to Atari 2600 and Television PS2. There's a huge gap between the Television and PS2, I got to tell you. Wii, Xbox 360, and PCs, starting with, I guess the first one being an Atari 130XE, then finally getting over to 386 and moving on from there. Since it's my livelihood, software development is my thing, it just unfortunately means that I have to update my PC all the time for games. Anyways, so question number 1. The big debate for people who play video games is PC versus console. Without starting a flame war, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being console only, 10 being PC only, give a rating where your preferences lie and provide support as to why that is your preference. We're going to start with SolidSmurf.
It's a 5. It actually falls right in the middle because it depends on what I'm doing. I'm not going to go into that now, but we'll open that discussion later. So 5.
All right. Shiznap, you're up.
I'm going to go with a 9. PCs are my thing. I prefer the functionality and basically the input device. You know, I get a keyboard and a mouse, do anything I want with it. So that's about it.
That's interesting. It's going to lead to a follow-on question. John, your go.
I got to go with an 8. I mean, it's really just dependent. I'm a big fan of RTSs. No console game brings RTSs to the table for me. PCs, they're where they're at. Represent.
And since you listed none, that really makes sense. Okay, for me, I'm going to actually say a 7. And the reason is that the thing that really brings me back to PCs is, quite honestly, not having to pay the royalties on each and every game. Digital download makes games much cheaper for the PC than ever on the console. And the only thing that keeps me coming back to consoles is that multiplayer offline experience that consoles pretty much are they're pretty much the bread and butter. And unfortunately, those games are a diminishing breed. If you're curious about what I'm talking about, check out this link right here for a previous video that I posted. Guys, further debate about why you're at where you're at. So Shiz, now I have to ask, you rated it what, a 9?
Yep.
And you own all those consoles though.
Yeah,
Explain
but
that juxtaposition to me, my man.
If you put it on a sliding scale from, like you said, 1 to 10, if I look at what do I use more, I use my PC for everything, man. It's, so if I'm sitting here and I bring up Steam, I click a game that I've downloaded and just go. I don't have to, go to a TV or, make sure that nobody's in the room, watching TV that I'm going to bother or whatever. And, so for me, it's just convenience. I prefer the input device, like I said. Controllers for consoles, even though I've had a ton of them, they just seem clunky and they don't give me the same function, the same control. It's not this precise, so.
Interesting point. There was originally a game that was available for both Xbox 360 and PC. I think it was called Shadowrun, and they eventually canceled that as being something that you could play on either the PC or the console because the PC owners dominated the game. The console, the console players pretty much could not keep up even slightly. Smurf, you answered a 5, but I gotta ask a question. Do you find your gameplay to be a sine wave of back and forth between the two, or is it really 5 all the way across?
It's pretty much a 5. If I'm playing a shooter or an RTS, I'm on the PC. You cannot beat a mouse. You really can't. I mean, it's just precision. But if I'm playing a third-person action game, I really love the joysticks of a controller. I love the button layouts. It flows into combos just fine. I mean, if you try to do WASD on a third person, it's kind of like, I don't know, it rubs me wrong. But you give me a joystick and it comes natural. So it really depends on, I own, I'm looking at my collection right now. I own one first-person shooter for my PS3, but if I look at my PC, I own 10. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
But vice versa, I own one third-person game for my PC, but I look over here and all the rest of my PS3 games are third-person games.
All right, John, I got to ask you a following question, too. When do you ever jump on to consoles? I mean, you didn't list any, so I'm kind of curious. Do you go to a buddy's house, and that's where it kind of isn't a 10 for you on the PC?
Yeah, I mean, I've honestly can say I've never owned a console game. I'm going to be getting a PS3. That'll be the first one that I've ever owned. But we go over to buddies' houses. We have a good time. We're playing, Halo, all those games. I rip it up. But I've never actually ever got the inclination to go sit down and drop $400 on a console when I could get, I just don't see the point.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about question number 2. What are the top 3 things that drive people to play video games over unplugged alternatives such as tabletops or role-playing game, the pen and paper version? And for this, we're going to actually jump over to Shiznav 1. You're on.
Okay. I think for me, it's always been 3 things: getting a group at the same place at the same time, right? Because everybody's got their lives. You have to coordinate and get together. You have to get along, right? So you got to have a lot of social energy. So everything has to work right. Otherwise, it's going to break down into bedlam. The learning curve, right? So, and what I mean by that is rules enforcement, as an example. Sorry, pause.
No.
Train jumped the track. Anyway.
No, I think that's good.
So in a PC environment, anything you do is legal, right? Within reason, unless you're glitching or hacking. But if you just take the game in its native environment, anything you do is legal. Whereas on a tabletop or in an RPG, if you don't get the rules right, you could be 3 or 4 turns into it and you're like, oh, wait, you've been moving wrong. Or, oh, I didn't realize you couldn't do that. Right, but the PC is going to be the omniscient Overwatch that's going to keep you in line. So anyway, that's just my 3 things.
So a lot of it is RTFM for Shiznav. John, what are your 3 points?
Okay, I got to say cost is the biggest thing that negates any of my friends from starting up tabletops. I love tabletops. Cost, they're just no, I'll just go buy a video game, cheaper. Then I gotta say it's investing all the time and energy that they have to put into learning the rule set for these games versus just picking up a joystick and just kind of fiddling around with it. You can button mash, open up a game out of a disc, and you can sit down and play it versus like a tabletop where you have to sit down and read something, God forbid. And then the last one is just the unwillingness of people to classify themselves as dorks. It's just this huge stereotype. If you're playing video games, serious. If you're playing video games, you're not a dork. You're a dude. If you're playing tabletops, you're a dork. I mean, that's how it breaks down. I don't condone that in any way. But in my experience, that's what I've seen. So.
All right. I would have to agree with that last bullet point, with the exception of maybe it might depend on also what video games you're playing. Smurf, you're up.
I'm going to go with convenience. I know within 20 miles of me there are 3 video game stores, but 1 tabletop store. Also, I'm going to go with, again, cost, like John was saying. I know I can go trade in like 4 of my games and get 2 new ones, but to sell my army is, that's losing time and commitment and all that stuff. There's a much bigger cost in that. And then also just that time. I know I can sit down, play 3 games of Assassin's Creed in an hour, but I can't sit down and play a tabletop game in an hour. It's just not going to happen. So it's convenience almost.
All right. My take on this is, it's quick to pick up and learn the rules of a PC game over any other type of game where, again, like John pointed out, you got to read. Number 2, total cost of ownership. A lot of people have a need for a computer. They don't have a need for a bunch of little metal miniatures. And number 3, the lack of time to engaging the hobby aspect of the game. And by this, I mean there's just not a lot of people who've got so much free time that they can sit around, glue a bunch of guys together, paint them up, get a bunch of beef from people who are hobbyist extremists when they take their army to the store, or even rules extremists who go, that kind of type of miniature can't carry a las cannon. I'm sorry. And so, again, the cost kind of becomes a factor. Guys, continue debate.
I think we covered pretty much everything, to be honest.
Yep. Let's move on.
Okay, but seriously, give me a fighting stance on why you think your number 1 is your number 1. Mine is the time to pick up and learn the rules. People don't have time to do it, so they're not going to do it. What's your guys' number 1?
I mean, I got another reason.
I agree with you.
Yeah. But I got another reason, because everyone has a microphone online, and they can shout and scream like a little 13-year-old all they want. But you put them across a tabletop, they start doing that, and they're going to have someone shouting and screaming right back in their face. So I think everyone gets tougher across the internet.
Okay. That's an interesting point. We're going to go ahead and jump on over to question number 3. Unless, John, you got anything else to add? Question number 2?
I was just going to say, in my experience, I've actually had people who I've been playing video games with and have said, hey, you want to go play Warhammer, War Machine with me? And they're like, no, dude, I'm not a loser. So, I mean, that is the legitimate breakdown to my stance on why that's number 1.
Well, I mean, I've had this discussion before. It comes down to instant gratification. The ebb and tides of a game. You might not be doing so hot one turn, but then you can turn it later on. But everyone wants to sit down and get a headshot in 2.6 seconds at 5 miles away of awesomeness. But, and then they scream across their mic like a 13-year-old listening to Justin Bieber. So
Machinima making PC gaming and console gaming cool beyond what we're seeing for, maybe it is the number of video game movies and basically getting name recognition out there that kind of is kind of pulling back some of the negative vibe. And maybe for the first time ever, I can think of a good reason that GW created Space Marine or Ultramarines, the movie. Question number 3. Video game innovation occurs at an ever-increasing rate, from the square that represented you as a dungeon adventure in the Atari 26 game Adventure to the immense sandbox world in the latest Grand Theft Auto. I'm only picking 2 because these are pretty extreme situations. Each member, list your top 3 innovation of console PC games that have somehow reinvigorated the system in your particular perspective. So I don't care if it's the number 1 time that something happens, but sometimes just because it's the first one doesn't mean it's the thing that all of a sudden gets to you to be, hey, this is an innovation. All right? So for this, we're going to start with John from WargamePainting.
I gotta say, the first thing that ever drew me to PCs as being just like, okay, I'm done with anything else was StarCraft. The cutscenes were so amazing. They did such a great job integrating this really like pixelated game, but then these gorgeous, almost video level cutscenes. And that was the first thing that drew me to that game, and I just picked it up. I'm just like, this is absolutely something I have to do.
All right, so give us number 2 and 3.
Number 2 would have to be, I'm going to jump. I'm going to even deviate here. The first time I ever considered picking up a console game is with just the ease of the transition into being able to pick up a game and have no learning curve, being able to button mash, and it would be with Soul Calibur. Was the first experience where I decided to come up and just, I'm like, oh my god, this game is awesome. I can play it and I can beat my friends who own this game. And let's go like this. So, I mean, that was the first innovation. I can't, on a PC with a mouse and a keyboard, you can't really do that. But with the buttons, you're just like, yeah, eat that. I don't know what I just did, but I won, And then, number 3, it goes, it's one more for the consoles. I'm a PC guy, but the innovation for integrating actual movement, the Nintendo Wii, I think was a great leap forward in technology as far as video games go.
All right. Smurf, you're up.
I'm going to have to go with HD viewing. I mean, what they're doing with visuals across PC and console right now are just ridiculous. And I mean, this excites me because if they've done this in the past 20 years, I got a long ways to go in life, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do in the future. Stat tracking and trophies. Whoever came up with this knew how to get to gaming addicts. To get every single trophy in a game is ridiculous, and sometimes you just want to smack someone and tell them they have no life for getting all of them. And then
because you're jealous.
You're jealous. You're like, I want to be that guy, but I don't at the same time. And then also the karma meter. Whoever came up with this in games, like when you have a choice if to be the good guy or the bad guy, because it just took us that much more deeper into the game. It took it from we're watching a movie but with action to we're making choices that influence our character and we get invested with them. And I think that's just, I love games with karma meters.
All right. Shiznaft, your turn, man.
All right. I'll go in a broader respect. Just overall, the advent of 3D graphics, having come from an era with combat, Donkey Kong and things like that, where we moved to the realm of 3D, where you actually can see 360 degrees, you have backdrops and color backgrounds, textures. That for me was brilliant. Number 2, the integration of internet connectivity. So being able to game with people, in Germany or wherever, is just awesome. And finally, I'll go with, I think John said it, the inclusion of physical interaction. It opens up the gaming to huge markets. I mean, you see grandparents gaming, you see, people playing golf or bowling who have never looked at a game. So I think those are my 3.
Everyone's been given some great answers here. For me, I'm actually going to kind of talk more about style of games. One, a return to cooperative gaming in games like Left 4 Dead, where you truly take this notion of people playing a video game, but the cooperation has to occur in order to get through a level. Taking that to a whole nother level was huge. Everything that we're going to talk about, by the way, on my side is going to be things that force people to game together. So number 2 is the advent of computer, and I really believe it might have been console gaming that came up with this first, where you were looking at one screen and multiple people were actually playing the game at the same time. My first experience with something like this would have been actually on an arcade when you were playing Gauntlet, and having 4 people standing around and focusing on the same task was just mind-numbing. It was an amazing experience. And the last thing, it wasn't necessarily internet gaming, but rather going back to your original Dooms and being able to land them together. So not only were you able to, again, focus on the same task and be in shouting distance of one another, turn around in a LAN party and smack someone upside the head going, hey man, you're supposed to shoot that guy. It added a certain sense of connectivity, not only to the game, but to your buddies all playing the same, going for the same task and making the same adjustment. Any continued discussion regarding this part?
I got to agree with your last thing there. We do LAN parties all the time, and the level of fun increases exponentially with every new person that you do it. We went old school. We played Diablo. Not Diablo 2.
Nice.
Diablo.
Awesome.
Full party. It was a blast. 18 hours flew by. No food, no breaks, nothing. You can't, I mean, you know, it's like,
That's
you can't
hardcore.
do that. I at least can't do that by myself, you know, but there's buddies, yeah, you know, sure.
The very first time that I had a chance to play, it was Left 4 Dead, and I landed at my parents' house and got them involved and a whole bunch of other people. Smurf was the only person who was online. Everyone else on both the survivors and the infected were all in the same area. So that
I remember that.
as we were getting new players in, we could kind of give them little hints about, hey, you should hide behind this and you should do this and do that. And it was just an amazing experience. Shiznaf, how about you, man?
For me, that's it. You guys have covered all the really great points. I didn't have anything to add.
Fantastic. Hey, guys, we're done with part 1 of episode 5 of season 2 of the Roundtable Discussion, and we'll be back with part 2 very shortly.